If you believe love can break a heart of steel, comment steel below.
She thought she had found safety, a gentle man, a quiet marriage, a life without fear. She told herself she loved him, even if her heart felt empty. But sometimes the men we think will protect us are the ones who break us. And sometimes the man we fear the most is the one who will love us deeper than anyone else. But Evelyn Bellin's love story was never hers to choose. Her father, Victor Bellin, was drowning in debts he could not repay. And when the banks turned their backs, he struck a bargain with New York's most feared syndicate. The price was not money. It was his only daughter. She would marry Adrian Morello, the coldest member of the Morello dynasty, the eldest son of the city's most dangerous family. Her fate was sealed before she even reached the altar. Evelyn Bellin sat in her sun-drenched bedroom, a book untouched in her hands. The engagement ring on her finger felt heavy. It was a simple diamond, nothing like the extravagant jewels of the socialites in the newspapers. Thomas had placed it there with a soft smile. He was kind. He was gentle. He was safe. She watched him from her window now, standing in the garden below. He was talking to a gardener, his shoulders relaxed. He was everything her father was not. Thomas was calm. He was predictable. She loved him because he was not a storm. Her life had been a series of violent gusts of her father's desperate schemes and hushed arguments with angry men. Thomas was a safe harbor. She repeated the words to herself like a prayer. I love him. I love Thomas. Her heart, however, remained a still, quiet lake. It was not a violent, passionate love. It was the love of a shipwreck survivor for the small island they washed ashore on. It was a love born of need and exhaustion. She told herself that was enough. She told herself that was what love really was. A quiet life, a gentle hand. No more fear. She clung to this idea, a fragile shield against the world outside her window. 3 months earlier, her father, Victor Bellin, had walked through the doors of the Morello family's private club. The air was thick with the scent of cigars and expensive whiskey. Victor's hands shook as he was led to a back room where Giovanni Morello sat, a cigar held between 2 fingers. He did not look up. Giovanni? Victor began, his voice barely a whisper. I have nowhere else to go. Giovanni Morello finally looked at him. His eyes were like polished stones, hard and unreadable. He had been a close friend of Victor's father. That had been decades ago. You chose the hard way, Victor, Giovanni said, his voice a low rumble. I told you not to dabble with those fools. I told you where the true money was. You wanted to be a legitimate man. Now, look where it brought you. Victor's face crumpled. The banks, they're calling in the notes. Everything is gone. The house, the business, everything. They'll take it all. I can't. He trailed off, unable to say the words. Giovanni took a long drag from his cigar. I know a man who can help you, a friend of mine. He will wipe your slate clean. Victor's eyes widened with a flicker of hope. Anything. I'll pay anything. Giovanni shook his head. The price is not money, Victor. My friend wants a wife for his son. He wants a certain kind of girl. From a good, respectable family. One who has not been tainted by the kind of life we lead. He paused, his gaze fixed on Victor. He wants your daughter. He wants Evelyn. Victor's face went white. My daughter? I can't. She's to be married to another. Giovanni leaned forward. You have a choice. Your reputation, your life, or your daughter. But you'll be a very poor man, a very dead man, if you don't accept this deal. He watched as Victor's shoulders slumped. The light went out of his eyes. Evelyn, she's my everything, Victor whispered, but the words were a hollow plea. The wedding morning was a blur of silk and lace. Evelyn stood before the mirror in her wedding gown, a magnificent white dress with intricate beading. Her reflection was a stranger. She looked beautiful, she did not feel it. "Are you all right, my dear?" her mother asked, her voice soft with worry. Evelyn forced a smile. "Just nerves. Every bride has them." Her mother smoothed the train of her gown. "Thomas is such a good man. You are so lucky." Evelyn nodded, the lie tasting like ash on her tongue. Her father, Victor, entered the room, his eyes scanning the floor, the walls, anything but his daughter's face. He clasped her hands, his grip clammy and weak. "You are so beautiful, my little star," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He leaned in and kissed her cheek, but he did not meet her eyes. She felt the lie in his touch, the guilt. She looked at her reflection again, at the bright-eyed girl in the mirror. A perfect bride, a perfect lie. Downstairs, Thomas waited. He was dressed in a sleek tuxedo, a calm, patient smile on his lips. His friends clapped him on the shoulder, their voices loud and celebratory. Thomas looked at the clock, at the door. A flicker of something cold, something possessive crossed his face for a split second, a crack in his gentle mask. But then it was gone. He looked up the stairs, and his smile returned, wide and inviting. He was ready to claim his prize. The organ music swelled through the grand hall. Evelyn walked down the aisle on her father's arm. The hall was filled with the city's most elite. They were all here to witness the perfect wedding of a perfect couple. She saw Thomas waiting for her, his smile a beacon of reassurance. She reached the altar, her hand in his. The priest began to speak, his voice a drone in the vast space. Then, a sudden loud noise. The heavy wooden doors of the church burst open, slamming against the walls. A hush fell over the crowd. Giovanni Morello stepped into the aisle, a silent army of men behind him. They were dressed in dark, expensive suits, their faces impassive. Giovanni looked impossibly calm, a small, knowing smile on his face. The guests gasped, a wave of whispers rippling through the hall. Victor Belan's knees buckled. He looked at Giovanni, then at his daughter. His face was a canvas of pure terror. Giovanni walked slowly down the aisle, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He stopped before the altar and looked at Victor. His voice, when it came, was a low rumble that carried across the hushed crowd. "This was not our agreement, Victor." And then, Adrian Morello appeared. He stepped out from behind his father, silent. The guests held their breath. He was impossibly tall, his shoulders broad under his dark suit. His face was a study in cold, perfect bone structure, sharp and unforgiving. His eyes, a shade of stormy gray, swept over the crowd. He did not look at his father. He did not look at Victor. He looked directly at Evelyn. His presence was not a statement, it was a command. He was more intimidating in his stillness than his father was in his movement. Evelyn stood frozen, her hands still in Thomas's. He tried to pull her closer, but his grip was weak. Adrian Morello reached out and took her arm. He did not ask, he did not hesitate. He simply took. His touch was firm, not violent. He pulled her away from Thomas, a shocking public claim. Thomas's calm facade shattered. "Get your hands off her," he snarled, a viciousness in his voice that Evelyn had never heard before. He lunged at Adrian, but Adrian was faster. He simply shifted his weight, and Thomas stumbled. Adrian then effortlessly grabbed Thomas's arm and twisted it behind his back, a silent, brutal show of force. The crowd gasped again. Thomas grunted in pain, his face contorted in a mix of fury and helplessness. Victor Belan stood by, a broken statue. He could not speak. He could not move. The priest, the wedding party, the guests, they all watched in horrified silence. Adrian's men moved forward, forming a wall between the altar and the guests. Evelyn was pulled away, her beautiful wedding gown a stark contrast to the violence of the moment. She was dragged away from the altar, away from the man she thought would save her, into the dark embrace of the man who had claimed her. The silence was deafening. The humiliation was absolute. She was pushed into the back of a black sedan. The leather was cold against her bare skin. Adrian got in next to her. The door closed with a heavy thud, sealing her in with him. The car pulled away from the church, leaving the gasping guests and the crumbling ruins of her wedding behind. She pressed herself against the car door, her body trembling with fear and adrenaline. She stared out the window, the city lights a blur. He was silent beside her. He did not speak, he did not look at her. His face was a mask of stone. The car was filled with his silent, terrifying presence. The air felt thick, impossible to breathe. A shiver ran through her, not from the cold, but from the fear. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to make herself smaller. Adrian shifted. Without a word, he took off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The material was rough and heavy. It smelled of him, cigars, something musky, and a clean, sharp scent she couldn't place. It was a rough gesture, not gentle, but it was also strangely tender. A small human gesture in the midst of a terrifying nightmare. She did not thank him, she was too afraid to speak. She just pulled the jacket tighter, the warmth a small comfort against her cold skin. He still did not look at her. The car pulled up to a magnificent brownstone. It was a palace, a monument to old money and dangerous power. She was led inside, up a sweeping staircase, and into a bedroom so opulent it felt like a museum. The furniture was heavy dark wood. The curtains were a deep velvet. It was a grand room, the kind of room a king might sleep in. But it was not a room for a woman. It was masculine, filled with the deep, musky scent of a man. It was his room. He had brought her to his room. He walked to a corner of the room where several large, elegant boxes were stacked. They were tied with thick ribbons. "These were sent recently," he said, his voice a low rumble. He did not look at her. "I hope they fit." The words were simple, and yet they made her heart plummet. I hope they fit. It was not romantic. It was not a gesture of kindness. It was a statement of control. She realized he had planned for her. He had expected to bring a woman here. He had her new clothes ready for her. He hadn't just stolen her. He had already prepared her place in his world. A small, silent woman appeared in the doorway. She was a maid, her gray hair pulled into a tight bun. Adrian gestured toward the woman. "She will help you. We will eat in a few hours." He did not wait for a response. He turned and left, closing the heavy door behind him. She was alone, with a silent maid, with his room. She stared at the boxes, at the ribbons, and felt a profound sense of confusion. The maid began to light a fire in the hearth. The crackling sound was the only noise in the oppressive silence. Evelyn remained standing in the middle of the room, still in her wedding gown. The delicate lace, a cruel joke. The afternoon light began to fade through the tall windows. She watched as the golden light turned to a pale blue, then a deep violet. It was the longest afternoon of her life. Her mind was a whirlwind of questions and fear. What would happen tonight? Would he claim her? Would he be cruel? Why this room? Why had he already planned for her? She walked to the window and looked out. The gates were still standing tall and unmoving. There was no escape. A soft knock came at the door. Evelyn's heart jumped. It was the maid again, her expression still impassive. She motioned for Evelyn to follow. Without a word, the maid led her through the dark, silent hallways. They did not pass a single person. They walked past dozens of closed doors until they reached a smaller dining room. It was not the grand formal hall she had imagined. This was a private space. Adrian was already there, a glass of dark liquid in his hand, a look of quiet command on his face. The dinner was brief, conducted in almost complete silence. Evelyn could not swallow a bite. The food was impossibly rich, but her stomach was a knot of pure dread. Adrian did not eat. He watched her. His gaze dropped to her untouched plate, his jaw tightening. He set his fork down on the table, the clatter echoing in the silent room. Evelyn flinched. His eyes were cold, sharp, and absolute. "Eat your food," he said, his voice low and hard. "You need your strength." The words were not a request. They were an order. Evelyn's hand trembled as she picked up her fork. She brought a small piece of meat to her mouth. She barely chewed. It felt like paper. The meal was a forced performance, a demonstration of his ownership. When the silent meal was over, the maid led her back to the large empty bedroom. She felt no safer here than at the table. The sky outside the windows turned completely black. The room was dark except for the last embers of the fire. And then the door opened. She stiffened. It was Adrian. He walked in without a word. He did not look at her. He unbuttoned his shirt, leaving it on, and then he lay down on the bed, fully clothed. The bed was enormous, and he lay on the far side, his body a dark, unmoving shadow against the blankets. He did not look at her. He did not touch her. She stared at him, confused. This was not what she had expected. This was not how a man claimed his prize. This was not the brute she had imagined. The silence stretched between them like a thin wire. He was still. He was a statue of a man, watching the shadows on the wall. The tension in the room was thick, suffocating. He was not touching her, but she felt his presence everywhere. Finally, her voice came out, a small, weak whisper in the cavernous room. What kind of man are you?" His body remained still, but in the darkness, his eyes opened. She could feel his gaze on her, sharp and intense. He was watching her. The question hung in the air, unanswered. And in the silence, her fear was replaced by a new, more dangerous feeling, a terrible curiosity about the man who had stolen her life. The silence in the room after Adrian left was heavy, suffocating. Evelyn stood for a long moment, the ache in her arm a constant reminder of his touch. Her mind raced, a tangled mess of anger and confusion. She had been ripped from her life, her wedding destroyed, all for a reason she didn't understand. The house felt like a cage. The man who had taken her was a terrifying puzzle. She was tired of the fear. She was tired of the unanswered questions. She walked to the window, looking out at the manicured gardens below. Everything here was perfect, ordered, controlled, just like Adrian. A shiver ran down her spine, despite herself. She hated that feeling, the way his coldness and his silence seemed to hold a world of secrets. She had to know. She had to understand why her life had been taken. The door opened. Evelyn turned sharply, her heart pounding. Adrian stood in the doorway, as silent and unreadable as he had been by the window earlier. He wore a different suit, dark and impeccably tailored. He looked like a man ready to command his day. "What do you want?" Evelyn asked, her voice sharper than she intended. She would not cower. She would not let him see how afraid she truly was. He stepped into the room, his gaze sweeping over her. "This is my house. You will not question my presence." His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "And I am in your house against my will," she retorted, her anger bubbling to the surface. "My wedding was destroyed. My life has been ruined. I demand to know why you did this." "You had no right." Adrian moved further into the room, his eyes never leaving hers. He stood with an air of quiet authority, as if he were used to being obeyed without question. "I have every right. Your father made an agreement." Evelyn stared at him, bewildered. "An agreement? What are you talking about? My father has nothing to do with you. I have nothing to do with you." He stopped a few feet away, the space between them charged with unspoken tension. His gaze was intense, unwavering. "He came to my father, desperate, begging. He had gambled away everything. He was drowning in debts he could not pay. Evelyn felt a cold shock. A wave of disbelief washed over her. It was a lie. It had to be a lie. Her father, the man who had always taken care of her, the man who had been so careful to keep her life respectable and quiet. "You're lying," she whispered, her voice trembling. "My father would never. He wouldn't." Adrian's expression did not change. He was a stone wall. "Your father made his choices. He owed my family more than money. He owed a life. The price was not money. It was his only daughter." The words hit her like a physical blow. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with a sickening finality. Her father's distant look at the altar, his strange, tearful goodbye the day before, the clammy grip of his hand. It was all true. He hadn't protected her. He had sold her. Tears welled in her eyes, a mixture of rage and a crushing sense of betrayal. She stared at Adrian, her mind reeling. She had so many questions, so much anger and confusion, but his words had created a new, deeper wound. It wasn't just about being taken. It was about the man who had given her away. The fourth day felt like a lifetime. It had been filled with a silence so thick it was a constant weight on her chest. The afternoon light began to fade, casting long shadows across the room, and the silence was broken by a soft knock. The maid entered, her face impassive. She was carrying a box and a dress bag. The dress was a vision of ivory satin and intricate lace. It was elegant and beautiful, a true bridal gown. But as the maid helped her into it, Evelyn felt no joy. The dress was a costume of her captivity, a beautiful shroud for the life she was about to lose forever. Her hands trembled as the maid fastened the tiny buttons. The lace felt like a net, trapping her. Her reflection was a stranger, a beautiful bride with the eyes of a terrified prisoner. They led her from the room and down the sweeping staircase. The doors to the family hall were open. Inside, it was lit by the soft glow of gas lamps, casting a warm, deceptive light on the scene. It was a wedding. Her wedding. The entire Morello family was there. They stood in small, formal groups, watching her as she entered. The men were dressed in sharp suits, their faces a mix of curiosity and cold suspicion. The women wore elegant gowns, their expressions a study in polite indifference. Evelyn felt 100 pairs of eyes on her. She felt like an exhibit, an object. And then she saw the grandmother. She was seated in a large chair, her back straight as a steel rod. Her face was old, lined with a lifetime of secrets, but her eyes were like two pieces of polished obsidian, sharp, discerning, and unnervingly intelligent. The grandmother's gaze was not one of curiosity. It was one of study. It made Evelyn's skin crawl. Adrian stood at the head of the room with his father, Giovanni. Adrian's face was a mask of perfect indifference. He looked at her, and in that moment, she was nothing more than the object of a deal, a debt being paid. He did not smile, he did not move, until his uncle, a stocky man with a severe face, stepped forward. He was a marriage officer, a man with a heavy book in his hands. He was a man of the law, and in this house, the law was whatever the Morellos said it was. The ceremony was a blur. The uncle read from the book, his voice a drone in the solemn room. Her name. Adrian's name. It all felt like a nightmare. She was a doll in a dream she could not wake from. The uncle looked up, his gaze meeting hers. It was time for her to speak. "Do you, Evelyn Bellin, take Adrian Morello to be your lawfully wedded husband?" The words hung in the air. Her throat was a dry knot. She couldn't speak. She felt the weight of every person in the room on her. The silence was thick, pressing down on her. She was supposed to say no. She was supposed to scream. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. And then she looked at Adrian. His eyes were on her. They were unwavering, not with anger, but with an intensity so profound it was a physical force. It wasn't a look of love. It was a demand, a silent, terrifying command that told her she had no choice. She saw longing in them too, a cold, desperate wanting that unsettled her more than any threat. He was not just taking her, he was taking her for himself. Her breath caught in her throat, her pulse raced, the silence stretched. The entire room held its breath. She felt the pressure, the fear, and the dark promise in his eyes. I do, she whispered. The words felt like a violation. They felt wrong, but they were out now, in the open. The room let out a collective breath. She was his. After the ceremony, Adrian did not touch her. He did not kiss her. He simply turned and escorted her back to her room. He walked a few feet in front of her, his back a solid wall of indifference. He did not say a word. He opened her door, stood aside, and let her enter. She had expected to be claimed. She had expected a show of ownership, but all she got was a silent return to her prison. This was more unsettling than anything else. Before, he never touched me, and now, even as his wife, he still holds back. The contradiction felt deeply, profoundly wrong. She lay awake for hours in her wedding gown, the bed an island of dread. When the moon was high and the house had fallen into a deep, silent slumber, she got up. She needed to breathe. She needed to feel something other than the crushing weight of her new reality. She walked to the door and eased it open. Adrian was there, sitting in a chair in the hallway, reading a book. He was fully clothed, his dark suit a shadow in the dim light. He did not look up. "I need to go out," she said, the words a plea. "Please, I need to see the stars. I need fresh air." He looked up then. His eyes were cold, unreadable. For a long moment she thought he would refuse. Then he stood. "Get changed." He took her to a black car, the same one that had brought her here. He drove in silence, the city lights a blur outside the window. He did not take her to her father. He took her far away, to the docks, to the dark underbelly of the city. He did not speak. He just walked, and she had no choice but to follow. This was her first glimpse into his world. The air smelled of salt and oil and something dangerous. Men in dark suits and fedoras stood in the shadows, smoking cigars. They did not speak to Adrian, but their eyes were a language of respect and fear. They nodded, their deference absolute. It was a world of hushed power, of heavy shadows and quiet deals. And then she saw him, Thomas. He was standing with two other men, a heavy crate at their feet. His clothes were not the elegant suits he wore for her. They were plain, rough, suited for this place. He was not laughing. He was not smiling. He was giving orders. And in the harsh light of a single lamp, she saw a hard, cold look in his eyes that she had never, ever seen before. He was not the gentle man she thought she knew. He was a part of this world. He belonged to it. A wave of nausea washed over her. It couldn't be. The man she loved, the man she thought was safe, was not. He was part of the very nightmare she had been dragged into. She was a pawn, and Thomas, her supposed rescuer, was a player in the same dark game. When Adrian led her back to the car, Evelyn broke down. She couldn't hold it in anymore. The sobs racked her body. She sat in the back of the car, her hands trembling, her face buried in her knees. The man she loved was a lie. Her father was a lie. Adrian hadn't saved her from a monster. He had taken her from one monster and claimed her for himself. Slowly, without a word, he reached a hand out. He did not touch her. He did not comfort her. His hand moved to a small velvet box in the glove compartment and took it out. He set it on her lap without a sound. He didn't look at her, not for a moment. He just kept driving, his face a mask of stone. Evelyn stared down at the box. It was the box that had held her diamond ring from Thomas. She opened it. It was empty. The ring was gone. He had not just taken her. He had taken everything. And he did not need words to tell her so. But as she recoiled from the emptiness, she felt a sudden cold weight on her finger. She looked down at her hand. It was not bare. A ring was there. It was a single, large, flawless diamond set in a simple platinum band. It was impossibly beautiful. It was 1,000 times more expensive than the one Thomas had given her. It was heavy. It felt like a weight of ice. It felt like it was burning. The ring was not a symbol of love. It was a brand. The empty box in one hand was the ghost of a love that was a lie. The heavy, beautiful ring on her finger was the reality of a truth that was a nightmare. Adrian had not just taken a thing from her. He had taken her world and replaced it with his own. She returned to the mansion, a different person. She was no longer just a bride in a forced marriage. She was a woman trapped in a dangerous, violent world with no one left to trust. Her heart pounded with a fear so deep it felt like a sickness. Adrian's restraint felt more dangerous than cruelty, and now even Thomas, her only hope, is tainted. She was truly, completely alone. And with every beat of her heart, she felt the cold fire of his ring. The corridor closed with a soft thud, and Evelyn stumbled into her bedroom. The silk of her gown, a bitter mockery of a happy life. She barely made it to the bed before collapsing, the sobs she had held back now racking her body. They were silent at first, just a shaking of her shoulders, but then they came, great heaving gasps of air. She felt utterly lost. The man she had loved was a lie. Her father was a lie. There was no one left to trust. She didn't have the strength to undress, to move. She just lay there, a crumpled heap of satin and lace on the dark comforter, her body trembling with the sickness of a complete and total betrayal. Her thoughts spiraled, replaying Thomas's face, the hard, cold look in his eyes that she had never, ever seen before. The door opened. She didn't hear a sound, but she felt his presence. It was a tangible thing, a change in the air, a stillness that was not her own. She didn't look up. She couldn't. She just lay there, her sobs now just desperate, shallow gasps for air. Adrian moved into the room. He didn't come to the bed. He just stood there, his presence a heavy weight in the silence. He was a dark, immovable shadow in her periphery. She felt him watching her, not with pity, but with an unnerving intensity. His jaw was tight, a muscle ticking beneath his skin. His hands stayed at his sides, two fists of controlled restraint. He did not comfort her. He did not say a single word. He just stood and watched her fall apart, a silent witness to the devastation he had caused. He didn't leave her either. He stayed. He was an unmoving presence in the room, refusing to give her either comfort or true privacy. He had brought her to this rock bottom, and he was here to watch her hit it. She wanted to scream, to ask him if he had enjoyed this, if this had been part of the plan all along. But she had no voice. Her body was a wreck of trembling limbs and exhausted sobs. The silence between them was thick, charged with unspoken truths and a dangerous, forbidden intimacy he refused to act on. The room felt small, the air suffocating. The terror she felt was mixed with a new kind of awareness. He had brought her to this place, and he was the only person in the world who truly understood the depth of her despair. The morning sun felt like a foreign concept after the last few days spent in the gilded shadows of the mansion. Evelyn felt a desperate need for air, for a single moment of freedom. She walked out into the gardens, a vast, manicured expanse that felt more like a cage than a world. Her legs were shaky, her body weak from days of emotional strain and lack of sleep. She felt the world begin to tilt. She swayed on her feet, the perfectly trimmed hedges blurring before her eyes. Adrian watched from a balcony on the second floor, a dark, motionless silhouette against the stone. His jaw was clenched. He saw the way her body trembled, the sudden, sickly pallor of her skin. He saw the exact moment her knees gave way. His reaction was not a shout. It was a silent, lethal burst of motion. He didn't run. He moved with a horrifying, graceful speed. He passed every servant, every guard, his presence an absolute command. They all froze, knowing something had shifted. He reached her just as she began to fall, her body limp, her eyes rolling back. He caught her with a quiet authority, as if this was something he had always known would happen. His arms closed around her, a wall of hard, unyielding muscle. He carried her inside, his body a silent force cutting through the house. He didn't speak a single word until he was inside the main hall. He looked at a servant, and his voice was a low, chilling command. "Get the doctor, now." The servant did not hesitate. The rest of the household watched in silence as he carried her up the sweeping staircase and into the bedroom. He laid her on the bed with a controlled gentleness. He did not touch her beyond that. He stepped back and watched as the family doctor arrived, summoned in less than 10 minutes. The doctor examined her, his movements quick and professional. He gave a quiet diagnosis. "Exhaustion, emotional strain." "She is exhausted, my lord." Adrian simply nodded. His eyes, cold and unreadable, remained fixed on her pale face. He watched as the doctor ordered her to rest and gave a few instructions. He dismissed the doctor with a gesture, and the man left without another word. The room was silent once more. Adrian looked at her for a long moment, his gaze heavy with unspoken thoughts. His eyes refused to soften, but they lingered. He did not say a word, but his presence was a heavy blanket of possession. 2 months had passed. The cold grandeur of the Morello mansion had settled into a kind of grim routine. Evelyn was no longer the trembling victim. She had found a new, simmering defiance. The endless days of confinement had not broken her spirit. They had hardened it. She had learned to navigate the silent labyrinth of the house, to read the unspoken rules of the staff, and to find a fragile sense of self. Adrian's presence was a constant, unyielding weight, a shadow she could never escape. His care was shown in quiet, restrained actions, a bodyguard appearing at the door, a fresh bouquet of flowers in a vase, a silent plate of food arriving on time. He never let it look soft. But the routine did not erase her thoughts. At night she still saw Thomas's face, not as the gentle man she thought she knew, but as the stranger she saw at the docks, his eyes hard and cold. The memory was a poison in her mind, a wound that festered. She was torn between the pain of his betrayal and a confusing awareness of the man who now owned her. Adrian was a monster, but he was a monster with a code, a terrifying, unbreakable sense of control. One evening, she found him in the library, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. She was tired of the silence. "Are you going to keep me locked in here, forever?" she asked, her voice tight with frustration. "Am I supposed to be a prisoner for the rest of my life?" Adrian took a slow sip from his glass. He didn't even look at her. "You are my wife now." "I am not Thomas's wife," she shot back, the words laced with a fury she hadn't felt in a long time. "I am not a prisoner. I deserve to live." His gaze finally moved to hers. It was cold and unwavering. He set his glass down on a nearby table with a quiet thud. "You are not a prisoner," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You are my wife. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for both of us." He took a step closer, his eyes a direct challenge. "I'm the reason your father is alive and recovering. Remember that before you accuse me of keeping you here." The words were like a slap. He had used her father's life as a weapon, a final, cold statement of his power. It was a truth she couldn't deny. A quiet rage began to simmer in her chest, a heat she didn't know how to contain. The anger had been building for 2 months, a storm waiting for a reason to break. The accusation had been building since she first saw Thomas at the docks. She found Adrian in his study, going over ledgers, a quiet hum of power filling the room. He didn't look up. Evelyn couldn't stand it.
You're impossible!
She finally shouted. The words flew out, raw and unfiltered.
You're a cold, controlling, impossible man. What are you? A robot? A stone? You have no feelings, no humanity.
Adrian slowly looked up from his papers. His jaw was clenched, his eyes narrow. He was not a man who was used to being shouted at. He closed the book with a deliberate, soft thud. He stood and walked toward her. You have no right to talk to me like that, he said, his voice low and dangerous.
I have every right,
she screamed back, the tears of frustration welling in her eyes.
You ruined my life. You took everything from me.
In a flash of pure, unthinking anger, she raised her hand and swung it, aiming to slap the cold, perfect mask from his face.
Adrian's reaction was instant.
He moved faster than she thought possible. His hand shot out and caught her wrist mid-air. His fingers wrapped around her arm, not gently, but with a force that made her gasp. He didn't just stop her. He used the momentum of her swing to pull her in close, her body colliding with his, her face inches from his. His jaw was clenched, a muscle ticking violently in his cheek. His eyes were burning, not with fury alone, but with a raw, restrained desire. His breath was heavy, hot against her cheek. He didn't kiss her. His lips hovered near hers, a silent, powerful threat. The unspoken intimacy of the moment was so charged, it felt dangerous. She was terrified. He was her captor. He was a monster. But the warmth of his body, the intensity of his gaze, she was trembling with a conflict she didn't understand. Then, with a sudden jerk, she shoved him away. The shock of his action, the heat of his closeness was too much. She stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with fear and something else. Adrian smirked, a cold, humorless expression. He did not chase her. He simply stood there, his hands in his pockets. The storm in his eyes now carefully controlled. You'll never run to Thomas again, he muttered, his voice a low, chilling promise. You're mine. Evelyn was shaken, her mind a whirlwind of hate, fear, and a terrifying flicker of something else, an awareness of a man so dangerous, so powerful, that she couldn't tear her eyes away from him. The next week, the silence in the mansion felt different, more strained. They were attending a society gathering, a sea of glittering dresses and sharp tuxedos. Adrian moved through the crowd with quiet authority, a man in a world of his own. But then, a woman approached him. She was glamorous, poised, in a shimmering black dress that hugged her curves. Her name was Isabella, and her smile was practiced and knowing. Adrian, my dear, she purred, her eyes raking over him. It's been too long. Evelyn watched from a distance as Isabella flirted, her hand resting on Adrian's arm for a moment too long. She spoke of things Evelyn didn't understand, of deals and power plays and a world of darkness. She laughed, and the sound was like a silver bell. She fit perfectly in Adrian's world. She was polished and dangerous. She was his equal. Isabella glanced at Evelyn then, a small, superior smirk on her face. You found yourself a charming little wife, Adrian, but she looks so lost. She doesn't seem to know the world we live in. The words were a sharp, calculated knife. Evelyn felt a sharp, unwanted twist of jealousy in her gut. She hated Isabella, but she hated herself more for feeling it. Adrian's face remained a mask of stone. He politely excused himself, his voice curt. He did not entertain Isabella, But his indifference to Evelyn afterward, the way he seemed to ignore her for the rest of the night, made the sting of the encounter even worse. Back at the mansion, Evelyn felt a new insidious doubt. Was she just a pawn in his game? A pretty face for society events? Can she ever matter to him? Can she ever belong here? That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She walked to Adrian's study, where a light was on. She saw him sitting at his desk, the quiet hum of power filling the room. She stood in the doorway, her anger a low flame in her chest. "Did you enjoy your night with her?" Evelyn asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt. "Did you miss her? Your beautiful, dangerous world?" She stepped further into the room. "Am I just a prisoner here? A pet you parade around?" Adrian slowly looked up. His eyes in the low light were blazing. She had crossed a line. He stood and moved toward her with a quiet, lethal speed. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He pulled her close, pinning her against the wall with his body. She felt his powerful hands on her arms, his breath heavy, his gaze burning with a storm of emotion. He growled, his voice low and dangerous. "You are my wife. The sooner you accept that, the easier it will be for you." Evelyn, trembling but furious, pushed back against his chest. "I will never accept your world. I will never be a part of it." A cold smirk touched his lips. His jaw was tight, a muscle ticking in his cheek. He did not move. His eyes held hers. His hand, which was holding her arm, slowly moved. His fingers, now soft, now a gentle touch, moved up her arm to her face. He cupped her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. His eyes held hers with a burning intensity, and for a terrifying second she thought he might finally kiss her, but he didn't. Instead, he leaned in, his lips brushing her ear, and he whispered something that changed everything. "You're wrong. You were already part of it before I even found you."
Your touch is a flame I was sworn to deny, but one glance from you cut straight through the line.
I built these walls so no one could see, but you've broken the chain that was binding me.
My silence was armor, my heart made of stone. I swore I was stronger when I stood alone. But the fire in your eyes burns hotter than pain. I'm losing the battle, yet calling your name. Can love break a heart of steel? Every wound you leave refuses to heal.
I was forged in shadows, too cold to feel, but you're teaching me love can break a heart of steel.
Your courage disarms me, your tears make me weak. The strength that I fear is the truth that you speak.
I drag you in close, then I push you away, but your spirit keeps fighting, it won't let me stray.
Your voice is the echo I cannot ignore. It cuts through the silence, it opens the door. I swore I'd be ruthless, I swore I'd be cruel, but the fire you bring makes me break every rule. Can love break a heart of steel? Every wound you leave refuses to heal.
You're teaching me love can break a heart of steel.
I call you defiant, you call me afraid. Two souls on the edge of the vows that we made.
I curse your defiance, yet hunger for more. You're the only weakness my soul can ignore.
Your shadow has bound me, I can't let it go. You haunt every thought, though I'll never show. I'm chained to the fire, I can't conceal. You're the only one breaking this heart of steel.
If hate was my refuge, you shattered the lie. If pride was salvation, you've left it to die.
We're caught in the clash, where the pain turns real, where I burn for the touch that my vows conceal.
Each fight that we wage only fans the flame.
Each word that we throw only sharpens the pain.
We've broken each other, we've bled, we've cried.
Yet you're still the one standing here by my side. So damn the chains and damn the past. The walls I built weren't meant to last. Where war and peace, where shadow and light. And I'll burn for your love till the end of my life. Can love break a heart of steel? Every wound you leave refuses to heal. I was forged in shadows, too cold to feel.
You're teaching me love can break a heart of steel.
I was born to be stone, never meant to feel.
But you've shown me love can break a heart of steel.